They fired me on a Tuesday. By Friday, they'd lost $14 million in contracts. By the end of the month, they'd lost the company. My name's Nathan Sullivan. I'm 52 years old. Here's what happened. We need hungrier talent who can meet higher targets, Jason said, sliding the termination papers across his polished desk. I looked at the papers, but didn't touch them. 7 years of building a client portfolio that accounted for roughly 40% of the company's revenue. No shortcuts, just long days, constant travel to factory floors, and relationships built on trust and technical know-how. I smiled, thanked him for the opportunity, and walked out without argument. Jason Bardwell had arrived 8 months ago as our new VP of Sales. Howard Nielsen, our CEO, brought him in to reinvigorate the team. Jason wore expensive suits, spoke in tired motivational phrases, and had never once joined me on a plant tour. 3 weeks after starting, he'd implemented a new commission structure that slashed my earnings by 20%, despite my numbers being consistently strong. The signs had been there. My desk got moved to a corner during renovations. My name disappeared from meeting invites. Last week, I'd noticed IT servicing my computer while I was at lunch. Small things, not worth mentioning, but enough to know something was coming. I packed 7 years into a single cardboard box. Family photos, a coffee mug Andy had given me after his football championship, a folder of client contact information I'd kept separate from the company database. Just habit, really. Need help with that? Asked Pat Hensley from accounting. She looked genuinely confused. Are you changing offices? Something like that, I replied. On the elevator ride down, I stood next to Howard Nielsen. He nodded without really seeing me, too focused on his phone. He had no idea what Jason had just done, or what it would mean for quarterly projections. But he would soon enough. Walking to my truck, I didn't feel anger, just clarity, like waking up from a long, comfortable dream to find the house was never really yours. I drove home in silence, no calls, no radio, just thinking about tomorrow. My phone buzzed as I pulled into my driveway. Cal Porter, my biggest client. The annual contract renewal was next week. He'd texted about dinner reservations for when he'd be in town. He didn't know yet. Nobody did. I set the phone on the kitchen counter without answering and looked out the window. 7 years of client relationships, all built on my word and my reliability. Jason didn't just fire an employee today. He'd cut the only line connecting Midwest Industrial to millions in revenue. And he had no idea. I joined Midwest Industrial back when it was still called Cincinnati Manufacturing Services, before the rebranding and the fancy downtown office. Howard hired me himself, straight from a competitor where I'd been hitting targets but getting passed over for promotion. I want someone who knows this market, he'd said. Someone clients trust. For 5 years, he was right to trust me. I built our client base from regional shops to national accounts, extended contracts from 1-year terms to 3 and 5, brought in Porter Steelworks when they left our biggest competitor, added Kozlowski Industries when nobody thought we had a chance, secured Midwest Machining Group after 6 months of technical discussions about precision tolerances and production efficiency. My wife Claire used to joke that I was married to my clients. Thursday night dinner with the Porters again? She'd ask, already knowing the answer. The kids grew used to me missing ball games and recitals. Dad's working became their normal. I promised it would be worth it someday. 3 promotions, 2 office expansions, and 1 recession later, Midwest Industrial had grown from a $4 million operation to a $45 million enterprise. My accounts were responsible for about $18 million of that. Not that anyone had calculated the exact percentage until Jason arrived. The first red flag appeared during a quarterly review meeting 3 months after Jason took over sales. Your client acquisition rate has flatlined, he said, pointing to a chart showing I'd only added 2 new accounts that quarter. Because I'm focused on expanding existing relationships, I explained. The Porter contract just doubled. The future is in new business, Jason insisted. Farmers maintain, hunters kill. We need killers, Nathan. A week later, Pat was reassigned. The following month, my travel requests required additional approval. My expense reports came back with questions. Small things. Death by 1,000 cuts. I started hearing whispers about fresh talent being interviewed. Young MBAs with aggressive pitches and no industry experience. Jason called them disruptors. Last month, he hired Alicia Winters, 29, from a consulting firm. During her first week, she was assigned to join me on a call with Cal Porter. No explanation, no proper introduction, just showing her the ropes. Cal noticed. After the call, he texted me, "Who's the kid? They replacing you with her?" I laughed it off, just expanding the team. But driving home that night, I felt something shift in my gut, the kind of certainty that comes from years of reading boardrooms and client faces. Something wasn't right. I should have trusted that feeling sooner. I placed my cardboard box on the kitchen counter and poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon. The house was empty. Claire was in Florida for the week, helping her father with some health issues. Probably for the best. I needed the quiet. I pulled out my personal phone and scrolled through my contacts. 7 years of relationships, over 200 clients, vendors, and industry connections, people who trusted me to handle their business, people who'd signed with Midwest Industrial because of me, not our corporate marketing or flashy downtown office. My work phone, now sitting disabled in the box, contained only the official correspondence. The dinner invitations, the golf outings, the personal cell numbers of CEOs and decision makers, those were all here on my personal device. Information I'd accumulated by being someone people wanted to work with. I sipped my drink and felt a strange calm settle over me. No panic, no desperation about mortgage payments or health insurance, just a clear understanding of what had happened and what would happen next. The bourbon burned going down. 7 years of 60-hour weeks, of missed family dinners and Andy's football games. 7 years of building something I thought was mine, only to discover it wasn't. I opened my laptop and pulled up my employment contract. The non-compete clause was there, but limited in scope. 1 year, and only applicable if I left voluntarily. Being terminated changed everything. There was no legal barrier to taking my clients elsewhere. My phone buzzed. Cal again. Dinner reservation confirmed for Thursday. Looking forward to discussing the renewal. I stared at the message for a long time. Cal Porter represented $2.3 million in annual business for Midwest Industrial. His company, Porter Steel Works, had been with me for 6 years. Before that, 3 years at my previous firm. Almost a decade of trust, built on the fact that I understood steel production, and he knew I'd been a Navy engineer before I ever touched sales. And he wasn't alone. Kozlowski Industries, Midwest Machining Group, Apex Fabrication. Together they accounted for another $8 million. All of them had contract renewals coming up in the next 30 days. All of them dealt exclusively through me. I set my glass down and made a decision. I wouldn't call anyone tonight, wouldn't send angry emails or make threats. I'd sleep on it, wake up clear-headed, and then make exactly 3 phone calls. Not to vent or complain, just to inform my closest clients that I was no longer with Midwest Industrial, effective immediately. The rest would happen on its own. I took out the family photos from my box. Andy's high school football championship. Madison's college graduation. The trip to Yellowstone we almost canceled because of a client emergency. I'd missed too much already. Tomorrow I'd start making different choices. I finished my bourbon and went upstairs to sleep. For the first time in years, I didn't set an alarm. No early flights, no quarterly projections to review before dawn, just the calm certainty that Jason Bardwell had made a catastrophic mistake, and I didn't need to do anything but step aside and let it unfold. I made my 3 calls the next morning, no dramatics, just facts. Cal, I'm no longer with Midwest Industrial as of yesterday. Wanted you to hear it from me directly. His response was immediate. What happened? Who's handling our account now? Jason Bardwell will probably reach out. Or maybe Alicia Winters. A long pause. The kid from the meeting? She doesn't know our business. That's all I can tell you. The rest is your decision. Similar conversations with Lawrence Kozlowski and Philip Garrison. No suggestions, no recruitment pitch, just information. Delivered with the same reliability they'd come to expect from me. By noon, my personal phone was buzzing constantly. Other clients had heard. The industry was small that way. At 2 p.m., Howard Nielsen called. I let it go to voicemail. Nathan, this is Howard. We need to talk about your transition. Several clients are expressing concerns. Please call me back immediately. I didn't. Instead, I drove downtown to meet with Benjamin Hartford, an attorney who specialized in employment law. I'd helped his daughter secure financing for her bakery 3 years ago. He owed me a favor. They can't stop you from working. Benjamin confirmed after reviewing my termination papers. But they'll try to scare your clients from following you. Prepare for that. By 4 p.m., Midwest Industrial's legal department had emailed a reminder about confidentiality obligations. By 5 p.m., Jason had texted, "Let's discuss your exit package. There might be room for consulting work." Too late. My phone buzzed again at 5:30 p.m. "Cal, just got off a call with your CEO and that VP who fired you. They promised continuity. Said Alicia would handle everything personally. Then they offered a 10% discount on renewal." "What did you tell them?" I asked. "That I'd think about it." I said nothing. Cal continued. "Nathan, I've been doing business with you for 9 years. You fixed our production line at 2 a.m. when our own engineer couldn't figure it out. You understand steel. That girl doesn't know a CNC machine from a coffee maker." He paused. "I've sent notice terminating our contract. Change in relationship management." Kozlowski and Garrison did the same. Still, I said nothing. "Where are you landing?" "Because wherever it is, that's where our business is going." That night, 3 more companies from my portfolio sent termination notices to Midwest Industrial. By Friday morning, the total was 8, representing $14 million in contracts. Howard called an emergency board meeting. I know because Pat texted me. Complete chaos here. Jason trying to blame you for client tampering. CEO asking why nobody saw this coming. My phone rang again, a number I didn't recognize. "Nathan Sullivan?" I answered. "Walter Lindsay here. Grantley Industrial Partners." I knew the name. Smaller firm, better reputation. "I hear you're available," Walter continued. "And several of our mutual friends speak highly of you. I'm listening. Senior Vice President position. $250,000 signing bonus. Full autonomy to manage your own accounts. And a seat on our executive committee. When would you want me to start? How's tomorrow sound?" I accepted on the spot. Not out of urgency or desperation, but because it was exactly what I wanted. Respect, autonomy, and recognition of the value I brought. That afternoon, Jason texted again. "Board approved a retention package. Full salary for 6 months plus stock options. Just help us transition your accounts." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. They'd had 7 years to value what I built. Now they were scrambling to put a price on it, after the fact. Too little, far too late. 1 week into my new role at Grantley Industrial, Pat called me from a personal number. "You need to know what happened," she said. "It wasn't just Jason wanting his own people." I sat in my new office, larger than the one at Midwest Industrial, and listened as 7 years of history reshuffled into a clearer picture. "They were planning to sell the firm," Pat explained. "Veritas Capital made an offer 2 months ago, but with conditions. They wanted to bring in their own account managers for the major clients, integrate them with their existing portfolio companies." It all made sense now. Jason hadn't been hired to grow sales. He was there to make me irrelevant before the Veritas deal closed. My termination wasn't about performance. It was preparation for acquisition. "How do you know this?" I asked. "I'm still assigned to the executive suite. I see the documents, hear the conversations. Yesterday they pulled the offer. Veritas won't buy without the client base you built." After we hung up, I sat still for a long time. 7 years of loyalty, and they'd been willing to detach me from my clients like removing a middleman. Not because I failed, because I succeeded too well. The relationships were too strong, too personal. They needed me gone before clients could be repackaged as corporate assets. I opened my laptop and checked my email. More former clients had reached out. The industry was humming with the news. Nathan Sullivan had moved to Grantley, and clients were following. Midwest Industrial's stock had dropped 12% in the first week. My phone buzzed with a text from Howard. "Can we meet? Just you and me. No lawyers." I didn't respond immediately. The betrayal hit me hard. Not just fired, sold out. I picked up the phone and called Cal Porter. "I need to ask you something," I said. "Did Midwest Industrial try to introduce you to anyone from Veritas Capital in the last few months?" A pause. "How did you know?" "They brought in some guy, Thomas Ashford, during our quarterly review. Said he was a strategic advisor looking at our industry. Asked a lot of questions about our future needs. Confirmation. They'd been parading Veritas representatives in front of my clients, laying groundwork for transition. All while I was still employed, still trusting I was building something that mattered. More calls revealed the same pattern. Behind my back, meetings scheduled, information gathered, relationships probed for weaknesses. By the end of the day, I'd confirmed that at least 6 of my major accounts had been covertly introduced to Veritas representatives, all under the guise of strategic advisors. I finally texted Howard back. No meeting necessary. I understand the Veritas situation completely. His response came quickly. Look, Nathan, the board, portfolio optimization. You understand, nothing personal. But it was personal. 7 years of building relationships, of knowing clients' kids' names and their vacation spots, of answering calls on weekends and holidays, all reduced to an impediment for a corporate transaction. I closed my laptop and looked out at the Cincinnati skyline from my new office. The view was different here, clearer somehow. Grantley had already signed contracts with 11 of my former clients, representing $16 million in annual revenue. And more were coming. Not because I was recruiting them, but because in this business, trust followed people, not logos or corporate strategies. Midwest Industrial hadn't just lost a salesman. They'd lost the foundation their growth was built upon, and they still didn't fully understand why. 3 weeks after joining Grantley, I received an invitation to speak at the Midwest Industrial Services Conference scheduled for 4 months out. The panel topic: Building Client Loyalty in a Transactional Market. The irony wasn't lost on me. I accepted, not for ego or exposure, but because I knew who would be in that audience: industry peers, potential clients, and most importantly, Midwest Industrial's remaining leadership team. Howard never missed this conference. Neither did the board members. Meanwhile, Grantley had given me resources Midwest Industrial never offered. 2 dedicated analysts, marketing support, and most crucially, equity partnership. Every client I brought in wasn't just commission. It was building something I partially owned. Walter Lindsay had been running Grantley as a $30 million firm for years. Steady, profitable, but looking for the right catalyst to scale. My arrival changed everything. I spent a month preparing for the conference, not with flashy slides or rehearsed anecdotes, but with data. Working nights with my analysts, I compiled performance metrics for every client who had followed me from Midwest Industrial to Grantley. The results were undeniable. Average service response time reduced by 53%. Implementation costs down 30%. Client satisfaction scores up 22 points. I wasn't going to explain the lesson. I'd let the numbers speak. 5 months after my termination, I stood backstage at the conference hotel ballroom. I spotted Howard immediately, huddled with 2 board members near the coffee station. His face tightened when he saw me. I nodded politely and moved on. The panel discussion began with standard questions about market trends and technological disruption. When my turn came, I spoke plainly. In an age where everything is automated, nobody keeps their word anymore. That's what sets you apart, I said. Companies often mistake client relationships for company assets. They aren't. They're trust agreements between individuals that need constant reinforcement. I presented my data without mentioning Midwest Industrial by name, just case studies of clients who had switched firms and seen immediate improvements. My Navy CO taught me something, I continued. People follow leaders who bleed with them, not suits who count from offices. I spent 7 years on factory floors, fixing production lines at 2 a.m., understanding the technical challenges my clients faced. That's not something you can replace with an MBA and a motivational speech. A few people in the audience shifted uncomfortably. I didn't need to name names. During the Q&A, a young analyst I didn't recognize asked the question everyone was thinking. Isn't your recent move from Midwest Industrial to Grantley, along with several major clients, exactly the scenario companies fear when they consider how much autonomy to give relationship managers? The room went silent. I could feel Howard's eyes boring into me from across the room. That's a fair question, I replied. But consider the alternative. Midwest Industrial lost those clients not because I took them, but because they failed to understand what those clients actually valued. No one followed me out of personal loyalty alone. They followed because their needs were consistently better met through my approach to service, an approach my former employer decided was no longer aligned with their direction. I paused, making brief eye contact with Howard. Every company has the right to change direction, and every client has the right to decide if that new direction serves their interests. The market is brutally efficient that way. After the panel, 3 more former Midwest Industrial clients approached me. By the end of the conference, Grantley had signed letters of intent with 5 new accounts, representing another $3.8 million in annual revenue. That evening, I checked the financial news. Midwest Industrial had announced a restructuring. Jason Bardwell was pursuing other opportunities. The Veritas acquisition was officially dead. Their stock had fallen another 8% after the conference, total of 20% since my departure. I closed my laptop. The market had spoken. 6 months after my termination, I stood in Grantley's largest conference room, surrounded by my team and the company's leadership. On the screen behind me, a single slide displayed our quarterly results. Grantley Industrial Partners, $30 million to $52 million in 6 months. My portfolio alone accounted for $20 million of the new revenue. The firm had nearly doubled. Walter Lindsay raised a glass. To the best acquisition we've ever made, and we didn't even have to buy a company to get it. Polite laughter rippled through the room. I smiled but didn't join in. This wasn't about celebration. It was about validation. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Midwest Industrial announces CEO transition. Howard Nielsen steps down amid continued revenue challenges. I slipped the phone back into my pocket without showing anyone. Later that afternoon, I received an email from Alicia Winters, the young woman Jason had tried to position as my replacement. I've been let go along with most of the sales team. Any chance Grantley is hiring? I forwarded it to HR with a note. Worth interviewing. Not her fault what happened. As I was leaving the office, my assistant handed me an envelope that had been couriered over. Inside was a handwritten note from Howard. Nielsen, you were right. I put the transaction above the relationship. Cost the company everything. If you're ever willing to have coffee, I'd appreciate the chance to apologize in person. I folded the note and placed it in my jacket pocket. Maybe someday. Not yet. That evening, driving home, I passed Midwest Industrial's building. The sign was being removed from the facade. The local business journal had reported they were downsizing to a smaller office in the suburbs. I didn't slow down, didn't take a photo, just drove on, eyes forward, toward the life I was building on my own terms. Cal Porter called me that night. Heard about Howard stepping down, he said. You feel any satisfaction? Not really, I replied. I'm too busy building something better. That's why we followed you, Nathan. You don't look back, you look forward. After we hung up, I sat on my back porch with a bourbon. Claire had returned from Florida the day before. She came out and sat next to me. You're different, she said. Lighter somehow. I got my life back, I replied. Took getting fired to realize I'd lost it. She squeezed my hand. Andy's got a game on Friday. Think you'll make it? Wouldn't miss it. 18 months after Jason had slid those termination papers across his desk, I signed the final documents making me Chief Operating Officer and full partner at Grantley Industrial Partners. The firm had grown from $30 million to $60 million since my arrival. 100% growth in a year and a half. My client portfolio now represented $28 million in annual revenue. I closed the folder and looked out my office window at the Cincinnati skyline. The same buildings, the same city, but everything else had changed. Claire entered with 2 cups of coffee. Signed and official? I nodded. Signed and official. She sat across from me, studying my face. You don't look as happy as I expected. Just thinking, I said, about what I'm building here, about doing it right this time. That morning, I'd approved hiring 3 new account managers, all with the same profit-sharing structure I'd negotiated for myself. No one would build something here only to have it taken away. That was my first act as partner. My phone buzzed. Cal Porter. Heard about the partnership. Congratulations. Knew you'd land on your feet. Thanks to clients like you, I replied. No, he corrected. Thanks to you being who you are. We just followed the value. After we hung up, I thought about that. Value. For 7 years at Midwest Industrial, I'd created it but never owned it. They treated what I built like company property, something that could be transferred or sold without my involvement. They learned the hard way that some things can't be transferred. I pulled up my email and saw a message from Pat Hensley. She'd left Midwest Industrial 2 months after the chaos began. Now she was working at a consulting firm doing well. Saw the news about your partnership, she wrote. Couldn't happen to a better person. By the way, Midwest Industrial is in final negotiations to sell what's left to a private equity firm for $8 million. Down from the $50 million Veritas was offering. Thought you'd want to know. $8 million. They'd lost $37 million in revenue and another $42 million in valuation, all because they tried to treat people like assets on a spreadsheet. I didn't feel satisfaction, just a quiet understanding that the market had rendered its verdict. Walter Lindsay knocked on my door frame. "Got a minute?" "Always." He sat down, looking more serious than usual. "I want to talk about succession planning. I'm 62. Been thinking about stepping back in 3 to 5 years. The board and I agree you're the right person to take over as CEO when that time comes." I'd been in the industry long enough to know what that meant. Not just a job offer. A legacy. "I appreciate that," I said, "but I need to make sure we keep building the right way. Profit sharing for everyone who brings real value. No one gets cut out of what they build." Walter smiled. "That's exactly why you're the right choice." After he left, I sat quietly for a moment. 52 years old, and I was being handed the keys to a $60 million enterprise with a clear path to $100 million. Not because I played politics or climbed a corporate ladder, because I'd built relationships based on trust and delivered value consistently. The hard way had turned out to be the right way. My phone rang. A Cincinnati number I didn't recognize. Nathan Sullivan. "Nathan, it's Howard Nielsen." I said nothing. "I know you got my note," he continued. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to say this. You were right about everything. I got greedy. Thought I could engineer an exit without considering the human element, the relationships you'd built. I treated you like a line item when you were the foundation." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I'm teaching a class at UC next semester, business ethics, and I want to use what happened as a case study. With your permission. About what happens when you prioritize transactions over relationships." I leaned back in my chair. "What would you tell them? That I had a guy who generated $18 million in revenue through genuine relationships built over 7 years. Instead of recognizing his value and building around him, I tried to systematize what he did, replace him with processes and younger, cheaper labor. I didn't just lose an employee, I lost the trust that held the entire client base together." He paused. "The Veritas deal fell apart because I didn't understand that clients weren't buying from Midwest Industrial. They were buying from Nathan Sullivan. When you left, there was nothing left to acquire." "You have my permission," I said. "Maybe someone else can learn from it." "Thank you. And Nathan, for what it's worth, I'm sorry." "I know." After we hung up, I looked at my calendar. Andy's performance was tonight at 7 p.m. I blocked off 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. No meetings, no calls, no exceptions. Claire had been right. I was lighter now. Not because of the success or the money or the partnership. Because I'd remembered what actually mattered. I picked up my phone and called Andy. "Hey, Dad," he answered. "Just wanted to let you know I'll be there tonight." "Front row." A pause. "You okay?" "You never call just to confirm." "I'm good, really good. Just wanted you to know I'll be there." "Thanks, Dad. That means a lot." After we hung up, I walked over to the window one more time. The Cincinnati skyline stretched out before me. Somewhere out there, Midwest Industrial was packing up their downtown office, preparing to move to cheaper space in the suburbs. Jason Bardwell was probably interviewing at some other company, ready to implement the same failed playbook. Howard Nielsen was retired, teaching others about mistakes that cost him everything. And I was here, running a $60 million firm with a clear path to CEO, surrounded by people who understood that business was still, at its core, about relationships between human beings. My phone buzzed one last time, a text from Walter. "Board meeting next week. Bringing on 2 more partners using your profit-sharing model. This is the future of the firm. Thank you for showing us the way." I pocketed my phone and grabbed my keys. 5 p.m. Time to head home, have dinner with Claire, and make it to Andy's performance with time to spare. As I walked through the office, I passed the new account managers I'd hired. Young, hungry, talented. But I'd made sure they understood from day one. Relationships first, transactions second. Build trust, deliver value, share the rewards. No one here would ever feel like I felt that Tuesday morning 18 months ago, holding a cardboard box and wondering if 7 years of loyalty meant anything. I stopped at the elevator and looked back at the office. The Grantley name on the wall. My name now attached to it as COO and partner. But more than that, my values embedded in how we did business. The elevator doors opened. I stepped in and pressed the button for the ground floor. Some losses clear the way for better victories. Some fires burn away what needs to go. As I drove home that evening, I passed a billboard for Midwest Industrial's liquidation sale. Office furniture and equipment. Everything must go. I kept driving, eyes forward, toward the life I'd built on my own terms, toward a front-row seat at my son's performance, toward a future where the work I did actually belonged to me. They'd fired me on a Tuesday, thinking they could replace relationships with systems and younger blood. The market had shown them exactly how wrong they were, and I'd shown myself that sometimes the best thing that can happen is being forced to rebuild. Because the second time around, you know exactly what foundation to lay. I pulled into my driveway at 5:45 p.m. Claire was waiting by the door, car keys in hand. "Ready?" she asked. "Ready," I said. We drove to Andy's performance together, the Cincinnati sunset painting the sky orange and red. For the first time in 7 years, I wasn't thinking about client calls or contract renewals or quarterly projections. I was just a father going to watch his son perform, a husband spending time with his wife, a man who'd finally figured out what actually mattered. The betrayal had hurt, the loss had stung, but it had also freed me to build something better. Something that couldn't be taken away because it was built on the right foundation from the start. As we pulled into the parking lot, my phone buzzed one more time. Another former Midwest Industrial client asking about bringing their business to Grantley. I turned the phone off and put it in my pocket. Tomorrow, tonight was for family, and for the first time in a very long time, that felt exactly right.